A gunshot exploded across the executive floor as Ariana dropped to her knees beside the shattered glass wall, and Billionaire CEO Damian Cross grabbed a corrupt executive before he plunged 60 stories to his death. Rain crashed against the windows. Security alarms screamed through the building. And standing in the middle of it all was the same invisible intern they once mocked for serving coffee. But Ariana Vale wasn't supposed to be there. Just weeks earlier, she was quietly surviving inside CrossNova Tech, hiding her identity while billionaires made deals worth more than her entire neighborhood combined. Nobody knew she was secretly the granddaughter of the company's forgotten co-founder. Nobody knew she had uncovered millions in hidden offshore accounts. And nobody knew the ruthless executive everyone trusted was preparing to destroy hundreds of lives just to protect his empire. Then one mistake changed everything. A stolen flash drive, a missing grandmother, a billionaire with too many secrets, and a dangerous attraction Ariana never saw coming. Because Damian Cross wasn't the hero of this story. He was arrogant, cold, addicted to control, the kind of man who could ruin someone's career with one sentence, then sleep peacefully afterward. So why did he suddenly risk everything to protect her? And why did Ariana begin trusting the same billionaire she once hated? As the lies unravel, betrayals turn deadly, hidden family secrets rise to the surface, and one terrifying question changes everything. Was Damian protecting Ariana? Or protecting himself? And when power finally collapses, who survives the fall? Stay until the end of this story because the final confrontation inside that glass tower changes all of their lives forever. And the last decision Damian makes will leave you questioning whether redemption can ever exist inside a world built on greed. Kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and it doesn't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video. Don't touch that screen. Damian Cross barked across the boardroom, just as Ariana Vale reached for the projector remote. Every head turned toward her. 20 executives, 2 lawyers, 3 investors connected through video call, and one intern standing beside a tray of untouched coffee cups like she had committed a crime. Damian stared at her from the far end of the table, his dark suit still damp from the rain outside, expensive watch glinting beneath the white conference lights. "You're here to take notes," he said. "Not think." A few people laughed under their breath. Ariana slowly lowered her hand. But the damage was already done. Because the graph behind Damian showed a projected quarterly profit increase that didn't exist. She knew it, and now so did he. Damian narrowed his eyes. "You think the numbers are wrong?" The room became uncomfortably still. Ariana looked around the table. Nobody would meet her eyes. Victor Hale leaned back in his chair with the faintest smile. He enjoyed moments like this. Watching weaker people collapse in public always seemed to relax him. Ariana swallowed carefully. The Singapore acquisition report uses duplicated revenue streams from subsidiaries already counted in Q2. Silence. One investor adjusted his glasses. Another leaned closer to the screen. Victor's smile disappeared. Damian walked toward the screen slowly. "Explain." Ariana hesitated. She already regretted opening her mouth. But then Damian looked at her again. Not curious. Annoyed. Like she was delaying his schedule. That irritated her more than it should have. "The software grouped inactive shell partners as active revenue contributors," Ariana said quietly. It inflated the projected return by 12%. One of the investors immediately opened the financial file on his tablet. Victor spoke fast. Too fast. "That's impossible. Those numbers were verified." Ariana looked at him. "By your department." Another silence. Worse this time. Damian glanced toward Victor. Victor forced a laugh. "We're really doing this?" Taking financial advice from an intern. Several executives relaxed instantly after that line. Someone snorted. Ariana looked back down at her notebook. There it was again. The invisible wall. The moment powerful people decided intelligence only mattered when it came from someone expensive enough to respect. Damian walked back toward the head of the table. Then he smiled. That smile was worse than yelling. "You know what your problem is?" Damian asked. Ariana said nothing. "You mistake access for importance." A few executives nodded immediately. "You sit in meetings," Damian continued, "and suddenly you think you belong in them." Victor leaned back comfortably again. Crisis over. Damian picked up Ariana's internship evaluation file from the table. "Ariana Vale," he read. "Temporary analyst intern. No MBA. No executive credentials. No board authorization. He dropped the file onto the table. Tell me something, Damian said. Who exactly gave you the confidence to interrupt a billion-dollar merger presentation? Ariana felt heat crawl into her face. Not embarrassment, anger, but she kept her voice steady. You asked if the numbers were wrong. One of the lawyers looked down immediately to hide a smile. Victor noticed. Damian noticed too. And Damian hated being challenged in front of people. You're done here, he said coldly. Security will deactivate your access before lunch. The words landed harder than Ariana expected. Not because of the internship, because she needed the job. Her grandmother's medication alone cost more than her monthly rent. But Damian had already turned away from her like the conversation was beneath him now. Continue the presentation, he told Victor. Ariana picked up her notebook slowly while executives avoided looking at her. Except one. Victor. He watched her carefully. Too carefully. Like he wasn't angry she spoke. Like he was worried about what she knew. That feeling stayed with Ariana all the way downstairs. Rain hammered against the glass walls of CrossNova Technologies as she walked through the lobby carrying the small cardboard box HR handed her 15 minutes later. One plant. One coffee mug. One framed photo of her grandmother smiling beside a birthday cake from 3 years ago. That was apparently the total value of 18 months of unpaid overtime. Miss Vale. She stopped. The security guard near the entrance lowered his voice. You okay? Ariana forced a smile. Define okay. The older man gave a tired chuckle. He does this sometimes. Public executions? Usually only on Thursdays. That almost made her laugh. Almost. Outside, the rain soaked through her coat instantly. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She ignored it. Then it rang again immediately. Ariana, a woman's voice asked after she answered. This is St. Mercy Hospital regarding Evelyn Vale. Her stomach dropped. What happened? Your grandmother collapsed during physical therapy this morning. Ariana stopped walking completely. Cars sprayed water across the street beside her, but she barely noticed. Is she all right? She's stable for now, but... The nurse hesitated. There's an issue with insurance authorization. Of course there was. There's also an outstanding balance. Ariana closed her eyes. How much? $23,411. The number sat in silence between them. Ariana almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because her life had apparently become a game where every door closed at the exact same moment. When do you need payment? She asked quietly. By tomorrow evening. Tomorrow. Not next month. Not next week. Tomorrow. I understand, Ariana whispered. But she didn't. Not really. Because $23,000 might as well have been $23 million. The call ended. Rain rolled down her face while people hurried past her under umbrellas without noticing the woman standing completely still in the middle of downtown Manhattan, trying not to fall apart. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time she answered angrily. What? Miss Vale? A male voice said nervously. This is Daniel from the legal office of Harper and Finch. Ariana frowned. I think you have the wrong number. No, ma'am. We've been attempting to reach you regarding the estate transfer documents left by your grandfather. Everything inside her paused. My grandfather died 11 years ago. Yes, the man replied carefully. But certain trust restrictions expired this morning on your 24th birthday. Ariana said nothing. Traffic roared nearby. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the sidewalk. There appears to be a controlling ownership stake connected to CrossNova Technologies under your name. The world around her suddenly sounded very far away. I'm sorry, Ariana whispered. What? You are now majority beneficiary of 48% shareholder control within CrossNova Technologies. A car horn blasted somewhere nearby. Ariana genuinely thought she misheard him. That's not possible. It is, Daniel answered softly. Your grandfather, Leonard Vale, was one of the original co-founders. Ariana nearly dropped the phone. No, her grandfather had been an engineer. Quiet. Broke. Sick near the end. He lived in a tiny apartment filled with old electronics and unfinished notebooks. He never acted like a billionaire founder. He sold his shares decades ago, Ariana said. Publicly, yes. Another pause. But not privately. The rain suddenly felt cold against her skin. Daniel continued carefully. Miss Vale, your grandfather spent years hiding ownership through international holding structures after an internal dispute forced him out of the company. Internal dispute. Such polite words for betrayal. Why hide it from me? Ariana asked. The trust conditions required secrecy until your 24th birthday. Ariana leaned against the wall outside a closed cafe. Her breathing became shallow. You're saying you currently own nearly half the company that terminated your employment this morning. Silence. Absolute silence inside her head. Then one terrifying thought appeared immediately. If she owned half the company, why was CrossNova almost bankrupt? Because the numbers from this morning weren't just wrong. They were manipulated. And if executives were hiding false projections from investors, someone inside the company was stealing enormous amounts of money. Ariana? Daniel asked carefully. Are you still there? Her eyes slowly lifted toward the towering CrossNova building across the street. Top floor lights still glowing through the storm. Damian Cross was probably upstairs right now humiliating another employee between merger calls, completely unaware that the intern he fired owned enough shares to destroy his empire before sunrise. Yes, Ariana said quietly. This time her voice sounded different. Calmer. Dangerously calm. I'm here. 3 hours later, Ariana sat inside her grandmother's apartment surrounded by unopened legal boxes, while Ariana Vale slept in the bedroom connected to oxygen support. The apartment smelled faintly of old books and peppermint tea. Rain tapped softly against the windows now. The storm outside had weakened. The storm inside her life had not. Ariana stared at the ownership documents spread across the kitchen table. CrossNova Holdings, international trust transfers, voting rights, board restrictions, encrypted banking records. Everything looked real. Too real. She rubbed her forehead. This makes no sense, she whispered. You sound exactly like your grandfather. Ariana nearly jumped. Evelyn stood quietly near the hallway wearing a pale blue robe, oxygen tube beneath her nose. You should be resting, Ariana said immediately. And you should stop whispering at legal paperwork like it insulted your mother. Evelyn sat carefully across from her. Show me. Ariana slid the documents over slowly. Evelyn read the first page, then the second. Then she closed her eyes for a long moment. He actually did it, she murmured. You knew? Ariana asked. Evelyn looked at her sadly. Your grandfather helped build CrossNova from nothing. Then why did we grow up struggling? Because powerful men don't like sharing power. Ariana sat back quietly. Evelyn pointed toward Damian Cross's signature on one document. His father forced Leonard out years ago. For what? For refusing to manipulate defense contracts. Ariana stared at her. Evelyn continued softly. Leonard discovered executives were laundering money through military software partnerships. What? He threatened to expose them. Ariana felt sick. So they buried him? They destroyed him financially first. Evelyn looked down at the papers. Then they waited for the stress to finish the job. The room became very quiet. Suddenly Ariana understood why her grandfather spent his final years angry whenever CrossNova appeared on television. Understood why he kept thousands of pages of handwritten notes hidden in storage boxes. Understood why he told her repeatedly, never trust rich men who smile while firing people. Ariana looked toward the documents again. You knew about the shares? Evelyn nodded once. But Leonard made me promise never to tell you. Why? Because people kill for this kind of ownership. That sentence lingered heavily in the apartment. Ariana laughed softly from disbelief. You're saying I accidentally became one of the most powerful shareholders in New York this morning. Evelyn reached across the table carefully. No. Ariana looked at her. You became a target. At CrossNova headquarters, Damian Cross stood inside his private office staring at the Manhattan skyline, while Victor Hale poured 2 glasses of whiskey behind him. You overreacted, Victor said casually. Damian didn't turn around. She embarrassed me in front of investors. She's an intern. She was right. That part irritated Damian most. Victor handed him a glass. The merger still proceeds tomorrow. Damian finally looked at him. Fix the numbers. They are fixed. No, Damian replied quietly. They're hidden. Victor smiled faintly. That's usually how corporate survival works. Damian took the glass slowly. You know what bothers me? Victor asked. That girl. Damian raised an eyebrow. She caught the discrepancy too quickly. She's smart. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Too smart. Damian ignored that. But Victor didn't. Because earlier that afternoon he'd searched Ariana Vale's personnel records. And one detail disturbed him deeply. Leonard Vale. The same Leonard Vale whose hidden ownership stake was rumored to still exist somewhere inside CrossNova's buried financial structures. Victor had spent years trying to locate those shares, because whoever controlled them controlled the company. And now the granddaughter suddenly appears inside CrossNova? No coincidence. Victor smiled slowly into his whiskey glass. Interesting. Very interesting. Meanwhile, across the city, Ariana opened the final storage box left by her grandfather. Inside sat dozens of journals, engineering sketches, financial records, and one black flash drive taped beneath the lid. A small handwritten note rested beside it. If they ever come after you, it means you finally know who you are. Ariana stared at the note for a long moment. Then her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? No response. Only breathing. Then a male voice spoke quietly. You should have stayed invisible. The line disconnected immediately. Ariana looked slowly toward the apartment door. Every light inside suddenly felt too dim, too exposed. And somewhere across Manhattan, someone already knew exactly who she was. Victor Hale slapped the conference table, so hard the water glasses rattled. Find her. Nobody answered. The security team stood stiffly near the wall, while Victor paced beneath the dim white lights of the executive floor. She accessed internal financial structures nobody outside senior leadership should even know exist, he snapped. So either Ariana Vale is smarter than everyone in this building. He stopped, then smiled coldly. Or somebody helped her. One of the analysts cleared his throat carefully. Sir, there's another issue. Victor looked at him. The analyst swallowed. 3 offshore transfers were blocked this morning. Silence. Victor walked toward him slowly. Blocked by who? We don't know. What do you mean you don't know? The override came from Legacy Shareholder Authority. Victor's expression changed instantly. Legacy Authority. Not Board Authority. Not Executive Authority. Founder Authority. Only one ownership structure inside CrossNova still carried that level of control. Leonard Vale's hidden shares. Victor stared at the analyst. How much money got stopped? $42 million. The room became dangerously quiet. Victor looked toward the massive city skyline outside the glass walls. Then he smiled. Not because he found this amusing, because now he was certain. Ariana knew. And if Ariana knew, then Damian could never find out before Victor secured control of the company permanently. Delete the transfer logs, Victor said calmly. The analyst blinked. Sir? Now. Meanwhile, Ariana sat inside the dark hospital waiting room, watching an old vending machine hum beneath flickering lights. It was almost midnight. She hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. Her grandmother remained upstairs connected to monitors while doctors debated whether insurance would continue treatment beyond the weekend. Ariana looked down at the black flash drive resting in her palm. She still hadn't opened it. Part of her didn't want to. Because once she did, everything would become real. The ownership, the corruption, the danger. Her phone buzzed softly. Daniel from the legal office. Ariana, he said immediately after she answered. We have a problem. Define problem. Someone attempted to access your trust documents tonight. Ariana sat upright. Who? We don't know yet, but the request originated from inside CrossNova. Of course it did. Daniel lowered his voice. Listen carefully. Until we finalize the shareholder transfer publicly, you cannot trust anyone connected to that company. Ariana laughed softly from exhaustion. That includes the CEO? A pause. Especially the CEO. At that exact moment, 2 floors above the waiting room, Damian Cross stood outside an ICU window staring at his younger sister connected to oxygen support. His jaw looked tired tonight. Not angry. Not arrogant. Just exhausted. The nurse beside him spoke quietly. She finally fell asleep. Damian nodded once. He hated hospitals. Too many machines. Too many people pretending money solved everything. It didn't. Not here. Not with Claire. The nurse handed him paperwork. She keeps refusing the specialist treatment. Damian took the papers without looking. She thinks she's dying anyway. She's scared. No, Damian replied quietly. She's angry. His sister had spent years trapped inside a body slowly betraying her, while Damian buried himself inside billion-dollar deals pretending control existed somewhere in life. It didn't. That realization had been eating him alive lately. Especially tonight. Especially after that intern looked him directly in the eyes during the board meeting and refused to back down. Ariana Vale. Something about her bothered him now. Not attraction. Not yet. Recognition. Like she knew something nobody else in that room understood. His phone buzzed. Victor Hale. Damian answered immediately. What? We need to talk privately. That sounds expensive. It might be catastrophic. 20 minutes later, Damian entered the executive parking garage beneath CrossNova, where Victor waited beside a black Mercedes. Rainwater dripped through the concrete ceiling above them. Victor looked tense. Actually tense. That almost never happened. She blocked offshore transfers tonight, Victor said immediately. Damian frowned. Who? Ariana Vale. Damian stared at him. That intern. She's not an intern. Victor handed him a tablet. Damian scanned the legal ownership documents silently. Then scanned them again. No. Victor nodded grimly. 48% shareholder control. Damian looked genuinely stunned for the first time in years. That's impossible. She inherited Leonard Vale's hidden stake. Damian looked back down at the screen slowly. Leonard Vale. The founder his father called a traitor until the day he died. You're certain? Damian asked quietly. Victor nodded. She can override executive decisions. Damian's expression darkened. She was inside my company for 18 months. Victor interrupted carefully. Watching us. That sentence lingered heavily in the garage. Damian looked toward the rain outside, then laughed once under his breath. Not amusement. Admiration. She corrected the merger numbers because she already knew. Victor watched him carefully. Damian, if she exposes legacy financial structures, regulators could dismantle CrossNova entirely. Damian turned back slowly. What aren't you telling me? Victor hesitated too long. Damian noticed immediately. What did you move offshore? Victor kept his face neutral. Operational reserves. How much? Another pause. Damian stepped closer. How much? Victor finally answered. 280 million. The garage went silent except for rain hitting concrete nearby. Damian stared at him. You moved nearly $300 million without board approval. Victor raised his voice slightly. I protected the company. No, Damian said quietly. You protected yourself. Victor's eyes darkened. Careful. Damian laughed once. Is that a threat? Victor stepped closer too. You think she's your enemy because she embarrassed you in a meeting. His voice lowered. She's worse. Damian said nothing. Victor pointed toward the ownership documents. That girl can remove you as CEO. And there it was. The real fear. Not money. Power. At the hospital downstairs, Ariana finally inserted the black flash drive into her old laptop. Folders appeared instantly across the screen. Project Eclipse. Defense routing. Executive transfers. CrossNova internal arbitration. Her stomach sank. Then she opened a video file dated 11 years earlier. Leonard Vale appeared on screen sitting inside a dim office. Older, tired, and afraid. If you're watching this, her grandfather said into the camera, it means they finally found you. Ariana stopped breathing for a moment. Leonard looked directly into the camera lens. CrossNova was never just a technology company. The recording glitched briefly. They used our AI systems to manipulate military surveillance contracts overseas. When I objected, they buried evidence through shell partnerships and removed me from the company. Ariana stared at the screen. They'll blame Damian eventually because his father trained him to protect the company at any cost. Her grandfather leaned closer. But Victor Hale. The screen crackled again. He's the dangerous one. Ariana's pulse became uneven. Leonard continued quietly. Victor doesn't want control of CrossNova. A long pause. He wants immunity. The video ended abruptly. Ariana sat completely still, staring at the black screen afterward. Then another file opened automatically. Financial records. Government contracts. Illegal offshore transactions spanning years. Victor hadn't stolen millions. He'd stolen billions. And somehow buried everything inside CrossNova's infrastructure. Her phone rang suddenly. Damian Cross. Ariana stared at the caller ID. Then answered cautiously. How did you get this number? You own half my company. Damian's voice sounded calm. Too calm. I figured your phone number wasn't impossible. Ariana almost hung up immediately. Instead she said, technically it's my company too. A brief silence. Then Damian laughed softly. First time she'd ever heard him laugh without cruelty attached to it. We need to meet. No. You don't even know why. I know enough. Damian leaned against the garage wall upstairs while Victor watched him from several feet away. You think Victor works for you? Ariana continued quietly. That's your first mistake. Victor's face changed instantly. Damian noticed. Interesting. What exactly are you accusing him of? Damian asked carefully. I'm not accusing anyone. Ariana looked toward her sleeping grandmother through the ICU window nearby. I'm deciding who deserves warning before this company explodes. Victor mouthed silently from across the garage. What is she saying? Damian ignored him. You're threatening me? Damian asked. No, Ariana's voice became colder. I'm deciding whether you're worth saving. Then she disconnected. Victor stepped forward immediately. What did she say? Damian looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. She's smarter than both of us. Victor didn't smile back. That answer terrified him. The next morning, Ariana arrived at her grandmother's apartment and immediately noticed the front door slightly open. Every nerve in her body reacted instantly. She pushed the door wider slowly. The apartment looked untouched. Too untouched. Like someone carefully searched without wanting it noticed. Ariana walked quietly toward the kitchen. One drawer remained partially open. Her grandfather's journals were gone. Only one thing remained on the table. A single sheet of paper. Stop digging. No signature. No threat. That made it worse somehow. Her phone buzzed. Hospital again. Ariana. The nurse sounded nervous this time. Your grandmother checked herself out 30 minutes ago. What? She insisted someone was following her. Fear crawled through Ariana immediately. Where did she go? We don't know. The call ended. Ariana grabbed her coat instantly. Then another message appeared on her screen. Unknown number. Look outside. Her heart pounded hard now. Ariana moved toward the apartment window carefully. A black SUV sat parked across the street. Engine running. Dark tinted windows. Watching the building. Ariana stepped back immediately. Another text appeared. You should have stayed quiet. She grabbed her laptop and the flash drive fast. Then another message came instantly after. Your grandmother didn't. Ariana ran. Meanwhile, Damian stormed into Victor Hale's office so aggressively that Victor nearly dropped his coffee. We have surveillance on her apartment now. Damian demanded. Victor blinked once. Excuse me? Don't insult me. Damian threw printed security photos onto the desk. Black SUV. Unregistered plates. CrossNova security detail. Victor looked at the photos carefully. Too carefully. Then sighed. I'm protecting the company. You're stalking a civilian. She controls your company. Damian leaned across the desk. Mine. Victor's expression hardened. Don't do this. Do what? Damian asked quietly. Start believing her over me. That sentence sat heavily between them. Because Victor had been beside Damian for nearly 12 years. Built CrossNova together after Damian's father died. Protected him through lawsuits. Scandals. Investor revolts. Victor wasn't just an executive. He was practically family. And yet, Damian remembered something now. The fear in Victor's face last night. Not fear of Ariana. Fear of exposure. Damian straightened slowly. If I discover you touched her grandmother. Victor interrupted sharply. You think I'm the villain because some emotional little girl inherited stock? Damian's eyes darkened. Victor noticed too late. Because Damian hated weakness. But he hated manipulation more. She's not emotional, Damian said quietly. Victor frowned. She's strategic. And for the first time since Ariana entered CrossNova, Damian Cross looked genuinely interested in her. Get down. Damian shouted the second the black SUV swerved onto the sidewalk toward Ariana. She barely reacted before a hand grabbed her coat and yanked her backward into the entrance of a crowded subway station. People screamed. Car horns blasted. The SUV slammed into a newspaper stand instead of her. Ariana hit the ground hard beside the stairs, breathing unevenly while papers and broken metal scattered across the wet pavement. Damian stood over her, chest rising heavily, one arm stretched protectively in front of her while security guards rushed outside. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. Rain dripped from Damian's dark coat onto the concrete floor beneath them. Ariana stared at him in disbelief. You followed me? You're welcome, Damian snapped. That car was trying to kill me. No, Damian replied immediately. That car was trying to scare you. You sound very informed. Damian looked toward the damaged SUV outside. Because if Victor wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. That sentence sat between them heavily. Ariana slowly stood. You really know how to comfort people. Damian looked irritated. You think sarcasm makes this less serious? You think showing up dramatically makes me trust you? The tension between them crackled harder than the storm outside. Security officers approached quickly. Mr. Cross, NYPD is on the way. Damian didn't take his eyes off Ariana. Find the driver. The officer hesitated. He ran. Of course he did. Ariana grabbed her bag immediately. I'm leaving. Damian stepped in front of her. No, I wasn't asking permission. You're a walking corporate bomb right now. Damian lowered his voice. Victor's terrified of you. Ariana laughed bitterly. Good. Damian studied her face carefully. Rainwater clung to loose strands of dark hair near her cheek while exhaustion sat heavily beneath her eyes. She looked angry, but beneath the anger, she looked scared, and trying very hard not to show it. Damian spoke more quietly this time. Where's your grandmother? Ariana's expression changed instantly. That was answer enough. You lost her. She left the hospital. When? This morning. Damian cursed under his breath. Ariana folded her arms defensively. You don't get to act concerned now. I'm concerned because Victor escalates when he loses control. And whose fault is that? Ariana fired back. You built a company where men like him survive. Damian looked away briefly. That irritated Ariana more than arguing would've. Because for the first time, he looked like he knew she was right. A police siren echoed nearby. Damian immediately grabbed her wrist. Come with me. Ariana pulled away. Absolutely not. If police take your statement publicly, Victor will know exactly where you are. He already knows. Yes, Damian replied quietly. Which means the next move won't be a warning. That landed differently. Ariana hated that part of her believed him. Damian noticed the hesitation instantly. You can hate me later. You assume there'll be a later. His eyes met hers. There will. Something about the certainty in his voice unsettled her more than fear itself. 40 minutes later, Ariana sat inside Damian Cross's penthouse, staring at windows large enough to make the entire city look small. The place barely looked lived in. Everything expensive. Everything cold. Black stone counters. Dark furniture. Soft jazz playing somewhere distant. No warmth anywhere. Damian tossed his keys onto the counter. Sit. I'm not a dog. You're also exhausted. Ariana stayed standing. This is insane. Damian loosened his tie slowly. You own nearly half my company. Our company. His mouth twitched slightly. Still getting used to that. Ariana studied him carefully now. Without the boardroom audience. Without the tailored corporate mask. Damian looked different tonight. Older somehow. Tired in ways money couldn't hide. You really didn't know about the offshore transfers? She asked suddenly. Damian looked at her directly. No. Then you're either lying. He walked toward her slowly. Or you're not nearly as powerful as everyone thinks. A strange silence filled the room. Damian stopped inches away from her. Careful. Ariana refused to back down. Why? You'll fire me again? That hit harder than she expected. She saw it in his face immediately. Regret. Tiny. Brief. But real. Damian looked away first. You embarrassed me in front of investors. You embarrassed yourself. Another silence. Then unexpectedly, Damian laughed softly. A real laugh this time. Short. Disbelieving. You know, he murmured, most people in this city are terrified of me. Ariana shrugged. That sounds lonely. Something shifted in his expression then. Not attraction. Recognition. Like nobody had spoken to him honestly in years. Before Damian could answer, his phone rang. Victor Hale. Damian stared at the screen, then answered on speaker intentionally. Victor. Victor sounded calm. Too calm. Where are you? At home. Alone? Damian glanced toward Ariana. A deliberate pause. No. Silence on the line. Then Victor laughed softly. Interesting. Ariana crossed her arms immediately. Put him on video. Damian raised an eyebrow. Bossy. Put him on video. Damian pressed the screen. Victor appeared instantly from inside his office at CrossNova. The moment Victor saw Ariana standing there, his entire face changed. Not surprise. Calculation. Well, Victor said smoothly. The missing intern. Ariana stared at him coldly. Where's my grandmother? Victor tilted his head slightly. That's a strange accusation. Answer the question. Victor leaned back comfortably. You inherited your grandfather's temper. Damian's expression darkened. Victor. Victor ignored him completely. Leonard Vale almost destroyed this company because he thought morality mattered more than survival. Ariana stepped closer to the screen. You stole billions. Victor smiled faintly. Did I? I have the records. You have fragments. Damian looked between them carefully now. Victor continued calmly. You think this is about greed? Ariana said nothing. Victor's voice lowered slightly. CrossNova survives because men like me do ugly things nobody else wants attached to their names. Damian's jaw moved subtly. What exactly did you do? Victor looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. You really never understood your father, did you? The room became still. Damian's eyes darkened instantly. Watch yourself. Victor leaned forward toward the camera. Your father approved every offshore defense contract personally. Ariana looked toward Damian sharply. Victor smiled slightly. Funny thing about rich families. Everyone loves pretending the dead were innocent. Damian ended the call immediately. Silence exploded through the penthouse afterward. Ariana stared at him carefully. Is it true? Damian walked toward the window slowly. I don't know. You don't sound surprised. My father built CrossNova from nothing. No, Ariana corrected quietly. My grandfather helped build it. That landed harder than she intended. Damian rested one hand against the glass overlooking Manhattan. He taught me one thing before he died, Damian said quietly. Ariana waited. Never apologize inside business. His reflection stared back at him in the dark window. And now I'm starting to think that advice ruined everyone around him. That was the first honest thing Ariana had ever heard him say. And somehow, that scared her more than his arrogance did. Hours later, Ariana stood alone in the guest bedroom, unable to sleep. The city lights stretched endlessly outside the windows while her thoughts spiraled harder every minute. Her grandmother missing. Victor growing desperate. Damian possibly innocent. Or possibly better at hiding guilt than she realized. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Damian entered holding 2 coffee mugs. I don't drink coffee after midnight, Ariana said immediately. It's tea. She blinked once. How did you know I prefer tea? Damian handed her the mug carefully. You drank tea every morning at exactly 8:15 in the employee cafe. Ariana stared at him suspiciously. That sounds creepy. I notice patterns. No, she muttered. You notice control. If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and it doesn't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you. And back, Damian leaned against the doorway quietly. You really hate me. Ariana looked down at the tea briefly. I hated what you represented. And now? She looked up slowly. Now was more complicated. That irritated her deeply. You humiliate people for sport, she said instead. Damian nodded once. Sometimes. You fire employees publicly. Yes. You built an environment where monsters thrive. His eyes stayed on hers. Also true. Ariana frowned slightly. You're not defending yourself? What would be the point? That answer caught her off guard. Damian stepped further into the room. You know what people misunderstand about power? Ariana stayed silent. They think it changes you. He looked toward the city lights outside. It doesn't. His voice became quieter. It reveals you. Ariana studied him carefully now. There it was again. The exhaustion beneath the arrogance. The loneliness beneath the control. He wasn't asking for sympathy, which somehow made the honesty feel heavier. Her phone suddenly buzzed violently across the nightstand. Unknown number again. Ariana answered immediately. Hello. Static. Then breathing. Then her grandmother's voice. Ariana. She stood instantly. Grandma, where are you? Evelyn sounded terrified. Don't trust. The call cut off abruptly. Ariana's blood ran cold. Grandma? Nothing. Damian was already moving toward her. Track the number. You can do that? I own a tech company. Within seconds, Damian grabbed another phone. Trace incoming call data now. Ariana paced anxiously while he spoke rapidly with someone from cybersecurity. Then Damian's expression changed. What? Ariana demanded. He ended the call slowly. That number originated from inside CrossNova headquarters. Everything stopped inside Ariana for a second. Victor had her grandmother. Damian grabbed his coat immediately. We're going. Ariana stared at him. You're helping me? Damian looked genuinely offended. He kidnapped an old woman. You sound surprised there's a moral line. There is. You just buried it under profit for years. Damian stepped closer. And you think you know me after one board meeting? The tension between them ignited instantly again. Ariana looked up at him. I think powerful men only become human when something threatens them personally. Damian stared back at her for a long moment. Then quietly said, Maybe. No denial. That honesty hit harder than defensive would have. 30 minutes later, Damian's black Aston Martin tore through Manhattan streets while rain hammered the windshield again. Ariana sat beside him, gripping her phone tightly. "You carry fear strangely," Damian said suddenly. She looked at him sharply. "Excuse me?" "Most people panic loudly. And me? You become quieter." Ariana looked out the window. Being emotional around rich people is dangerous. Damian glanced toward her briefly. "Who taught you that?" "My life." The car fell silent again. Then Damian spoke softly. "My father used to say fear makes employees obedient." Ariana looked at him. Damian's hands remained steady on the steering wheel. "I think he confused obedience with exhaustion." That sentence stayed with her. Because for the first time since meeting Damian Cross, she saw a man questioning the empire he inherited. And somehow that made him more dangerous. Not less. The CrossNova Tower appeared ahead through the rain like a giant black blade cutting into the night sky. Several executive floor lights still glowed near the top. Damian parked aggressively near the entrance. Security guards immediately approached. "Mr. Cross." "Move." The guards stepped aside instantly. Ariana followed Damian through the massive lobby, while her pulse hammered harder with every second. The elevators opened onto the executive floor in complete silence. Too silent. Damian noticed immediately. Something's wrong. Then they heard it. A crash somewhere down the hallway. Ariana ran first. Damian cursed and followed. They reached Victor's office just as another loud sound echoed inside. The door stood partially open. Ariana pushed inside instantly. Her grandmother sat tied to a chair beside the desk, frightened but alive. And Victor Hale stood near the windows holding a gun. "Don't come closer," Victor said calmly. Damian stepped in front of Ariana automatically. "Put it down." Victor laughed softly. "You finally grew a conscience at the worst possible moment." Evelyn looked toward Ariana desperately. He took the drive. Victor raised the black flash drive casually. "The funny thing about power," he said quietly, "is that everyone thinks they deserve it until survival becomes expensive." Rain slammed against the windows behind him, while Ariana stared at the gun in his hand, realizing this had gone far beyond corporate corruption now. And Damian Cross, the billionaire she once thought was untouchable, looked genuinely afraid for the first time in his life. "Put the gun down, Victor." Damian's voice came low and controlled, but Ariana heard the tension underneath it. Victor laughed once. "Now you sound like your father." Rain hammered the glass behind him while the city lights flickered across the office walls. Evelyn sat trembling beside the desk, wrists tied tightly to the chair. Ariana stepped sideways, trying to get closer to her grandmother. Victor noticed immediately. "Don't." He pointed the gun directly toward Evelyn instead. Ariana stopped breathing. "Please." Victor looked at her carefully. "You know what your problem is?" "My problem is you kidnapped my grandmother." "No," Victor smiled faintly. "Your problem is you still believe truth matters." Damian moved subtly closer. "You're cornered." Victor scoffed. "I'm wealthy. Men like me are never cornered. You're holding an old woman hostage in a corporate office." Damian's tone hardened. "That's not strategy anymore. That's panic." For the first time that night, Victor looked irritated. Ariana noticed it instantly. Good. That meant he was slipping. Victor lifted the flash drive slightly. "This little device destroys CrossNova." Damian didn't blink. "Then release it." Victor looked surprised. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Damian stepped forward. "If the company committed crimes, expose them." Ariana looked toward him sharply. Victor laughed harder now. "You think shareholders will survive that?" "No," Damian answered. "But maybe they shouldn't." Silence hit the room. Even Ariana looked stunned. Victor's expression darkened slowly. "You've changed." Damian looked disgusted. "No. I finally stopped pretending." Victor's jaw moved. "Your father would hate what you're becoming." "My father built an empire where people like Ariana cleaned floors while executives stole their futures." Damian's eyes never left Victor. So maybe his opinion isn't sacred anymore. Ariana stared at him quietly. There it was again. Not redemption. Not goodness. Something Messier. A man ripping apart the version of himself he'd spent years performing. Victor noticed it too, and it scared him, because men willing to lose power became unpredictable. Victor pointed the gun toward Damian now. "You think morality makes you brave?" "No," Damian replied calmly. "Losing everything does." That line landed heavily. Ariana saw it in Victor's face immediately. He realized Damian meant it. For the first time in years, Damian Cross genuinely didn't care about protecting the empire, and that made him dangerous. Victor's composure cracked slightly. Do you know what happens if those files go public? Damian answered instantly. Executives go to prison, and the company collapses. Maybe it deserves to. Victor's breathing changed. Faster now. Ariana slowly moved closer toward Evelyn again, while the two men focused on each other. Victor noticed too late. Stop moving. He turned the gun toward Ariana. Damian reacted instantly. Victor! The gun fired. Ariana screamed as glass exploded beside her head. Damian lunged forward. The office erupted into chaos. Victor stumbled backward as Damian slammed into him. The gun skidded across the floor beneath the conference table. Evelyn cried out in fear. Ariana dropped beside the table, searching desperately for the weapon, while the two men crashed violently into shelves and furniture behind her. Victor punched Damian hard across the jaw. You self-righteous idiot! Victor shouted. You think they'll thank you for destroying this company? Damian hit him back immediately. I'm not doing this for gratitude. Victor staggered sideways. Then why? Damian grabbed him by the collar. Because I'm tired. That answer stunned even Ariana. Victor looked confused for half a second before Damian slammed him against the wall again. Tired of watching rich men destroy people then call it business. Victor laughed bitterly through the pain. Now you want to be a hero? No, Damian growled. I want to stop being you. Security alarms suddenly blasted through the building. Someone had triggered emergency response downstairs. Victor heard it too. Panic flashed across his face for the first time. And panic made him reckless. He shoved Damian backward violently and ran for the gun. Ariana grabbed it first. Her hands shook as she pointed it toward Victor. Nobody moved. Victor stared at her carefully. You won't shoot me. Ariana's breathing turned uneven. Maybe he was right. She hated him. But killing someone, that changed people forever. Victor noticed the hesitation instantly. That's the difference between people like you and people like me, he said quietly. You still want to sleep at night. Ariana's hands trembled harder. Then Evelyn spoke weakly from the chair behind them. Karina. Ariana glanced toward her grandmother briefly. Victor moved instantly. Damian tackled him before he could reach Ariana again. Both men crashed through the glass office wall together. Ariana screamed. The sound of breaking glass roared across the executive floor, while papers flew everywhere. Damian barely caught the edge of the broken floor in time. Victor dangled beside him over nearly 60 stories of empty air. Rain blasted across both men violently. Ariana ran toward them in horror. Victor clung desperately to Damian's arm while the city glowed beneath them. Help me! Victor shouted. Damian strained against the weight. Ariana dropped beside the shattered edge immediately. Together they tried pulling Victor upward. Then Victor looked directly at Damian and smiled. Something cold moved through Ariana instantly. Victor still thought he could win. You know what happens if I survive this? Victor whispered. Damian's expression darkened. I destroy both of you. Ariana saw the realization hit Damian immediately. Victor would never stop, never apologize, never change. Even now, hanging above death itself, he was still threatening people. Victor noticed Damian hesitating. Don't do this, Victor warned quietly. Damian looked exhausted suddenly. Not physically, spiritually. Like years of compromise had finally caught up with him all at once. Then Victor said the worst thing possible. Your father understood what power costs. Damian's face changed instantly. Ariana watched something inside him finally break. Damian looked down at Victor calmly. No, he said quietly. He taught me what happens when nobody pays the price. Victor's grip slipped. For one terrifying second, Ariana thought Damian let go intentionally. Then Victor disappeared into the storm below. Ariana gasped sharply. Silence swallowed the room afterward except for the screaming rain outside. Damian slowly climbed back onto the floor, breathing heavily. Neither of them spoke. Security teams finally stormed the executive floor seconds later. Everything afterward became noise. Police, paramedics, questions, flashing lights, statements. Ariana barely processed any of it. She sat beside Evelyn inside an ambulance while dawn slowly appeared over Manhattan. Her grandmother held her hand weakly. You okay? Ariana whispered. Evelyn nodded faintly. You look like your grandfather when you're angry. Ariana laughed emotionally despite herself. That doesn't sound comforting. No, Evelyn smiled tiredly. It means you survive things. Across the street, Damian stood surrounded by lawyers and police officers. His expensive suit was torn. Blood stained one sleeve. Rainwater still clung to his dark hair. But somehow he looked calmer than before. One detective approached him again. "Mr. Cross, we need another statement about Victor Hale's fall." Damian answered quietly. "I already gave one." The detective lowered his voice. "People are going to ask whether you let him fall." Damian looked toward Ariana standing beside the ambulance. Their eyes met across the street. Then Damian replied, "People can ask." 3 weeks later, CrossNova collapsed publicly. News channels exploded with investigations. Offshore accounts, illegal contracts, executive corruption. Board members resigned almost daily. Stock prices crashed. Reporters swarmed Manhattan, constantly searching for scandal. And Damian Cross became the face of corporate disgrace overnight. Ariana watched it all unfold from a small rehabilitation center where Evelyn continued recovering. One morning, a nurse handed Ariana her phone carefully. "You should see this." Ariana looked down. Damian Cross resigns as CEO. The article loaded slowly beneath her fingertips. Damian had voluntarily surrendered majority control of CrossNova to federal restructuring teams. He also released a public statement. Not defensive, not polished, just brutally direct. "For years this company prioritized profit over accountability. I benefited from that system. So did many others. The difference is some of us had the privilege of ignoring the damage." Ariana reread the statement twice. Then a third time. It didn't sound like PR. That unsettled her more than spin would've. Later that evening, she found Damian sitting alone outside the rehabilitation center overlooking the water. No security guards. No assistants. No cameras. Just him. He looked up when she approached. "You walk quietly. You notice patterns." A small smile appeared briefly on his face. Ariana sat beside him carefully. "You resigned." "Yes. You could have fought harder." Damian looked toward the river. "I spent most of my life fighting to keep things I'm no longer sure deserve protecting." Ariana studied him quietly. Without the billionaire image surrounding him, he looked strangely human now. More dangerous in some ways. Because vulnerability from powerful men changed entire rooms. "You know they're investigating your father too," Ariana said softly. "I know. That must hurt." Damian laughed quietly without humor. "You know what hurts more?" Ariana waited. "I still miss him anyway." That honesty hit her unexpectedly hard. Because grief didn't disappear just because someone was flawed. And maybe that was the cruelest part of loving powerful people. Ariana looked out toward the water. "My grandfather used to say wealth reveals character faster than hardship." Damian glanced toward her. Was he right? She thought about Victor. About Damian. About herself. Yes. A long silence passed between them comfortably this time. Not romantic exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. Two people carrying different versions of the same disappointment. Damian finally spoke again. "What will you do now?" Ariana smiled faintly. "Probably something irresponsible." "That sounds ominous." "I'm reopening the employee legal fund my grandfather tried to create before the board shut it down." Damian nodded once. "Good. And I'm keeping my shares." That made him smirk slightly. "Of course you are. I earned them." "You absolutely did." For the first time since meeting him, Ariana believed he meant it completely. 6 months later, Ariana stood inside a rebuilt CrossNova headquarters watching employees move through bright redesigned office spaces that looked nothing like the cold executive tower from before. The company survived. Barely. Smaller now. Less glamorous. But cleaner. More transparent. The new leadership structure required public accountability reviews every quarter. Executive bonuses became tied to employee retention and labor conditions. Anonymous worker reporting systems appeared company-wide. And hidden talent recruitment programs opened across every department. Some investors hated it. Others called it revolutionary. Ariana called it overdue. Her grandmother now lived comfortably nearby while teaching multilingual literacy classes twice a week. Sometimes Ariana caught her smiling more than before. Like safety itself had returned color to her life. As for Damian, he disappeared from public view for months after resigning. Rumors spread constantly. Some claimed he lost everything. Others claimed he quietly bought new companies overseas. Nobody knew for certain. Then one rainy evening, Ariana found him unexpectedly waiting outside her office holding 2 cups of tea. "You still drink tea after midnight?" he asked. Ariana stared at him suspiciously. That line sounded smoother in your head, didn't it? Damian laughed softly. A little. He looked different now. Less polished. Less guarded. Still dangerous, though. That part probably never disappeared. Ariana crossed her arms. What are you doing here? Damian handed her one of the cups. I got offered a position. At another tech company? At yours. She blinked once. Excuse me? You need someone who understands how corrupt systems operate. And you volunteered yourself? Damian nodded calmly. Felt efficient. Ariana studied him carefully. You'd work under me. I'm aware. You hate losing control. Yes. And? Damian looked directly at her. I'm trying to learn the difference between control and trust. That answer stayed with her. Not because it sounded romantic. Because it sounded difficult. Real change usually did. Ariana looked out across the city lights glowing beyond the windows. The same city where invisible people kept entire industries alive while powerful men took credit for survival itself. Maybe systems could change. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe power always corrupted eventually. Or maybe the real danger came when nobody challenged the people holding it. Ariana finally looked back toward Damian. You'll probably be impossible to work with. Damian nodded once. Probably. And arrogant. Definitely. And exhausting. That too. A small smile appeared on Ariana's face despite herself. Then she opened the office door. Come inside anyway. Damian followed her into the lighted office, while rain tapped softly against the windows behind them. And somewhere far below, the city kept moving, full of invisible people still waiting for someone to finally see them. A gunshot exploded across the executive floor as Ariana dropped to her knees beside the shattered glass wall. And Billionaire CEO Damian Cross grabbed a corrupt executive before he plunged 60 stories to his death. Rain crashed against the windows. Security alarms screamed through the building. And standing in the middle of it all was the same, invisible, intern they once mocked for serving coffee. But Ariana Vale wasn't supposed to be there. Just weeks earlier, she was quietly surviving inside CrossNova Tech, hiding her identity while billionaires made deals worth more than her entire neighborhood combined. Nobody knew she was secretly the granddaughter of the company's forgotten co-founder. Nobody knew she had uncovered millions in hidden offshore accounts. And nobody knew the ruthless executive everyone trusted was preparing to destroy hundreds of lives just to protect his empire. Then one mistake changed everything. A stolen flash drive, a missing grandmother, a billionaire with too many secrets, and a dangerous attraction Ariana never saw coming. Because Damian Cross wasn't the hero of this story. He was arrogant, cold, addicted to control, the kind of man who could ruin someone's career with one sentence, then sleep peacefully afterward. So why did he suddenly risk everything to protect her? And why did Ariana begin trusting the same billionaire she once hated? As the lies unravel, betrayals turn deadly, hidden family secrets rise to the surface, and one terrifying question changes everything. Was Damian protecting Ariana? Or protecting himself? And when power finally collapses, who survives the fall? Stay until the end of this story because the final confrontation inside that glass tower changes all of their lives forever. And the last decision Damian makes will leave you questioning whether redemption can ever exist inside a world built on greed. If you enjoyed this story, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel for more emotionally powerful billionaire romances where silence hides secrets, love challenges power, and one brave choice changes everything. New stories every week. Your subscription helps these stories keep coming.